I was still wearing my dusty white linen pants and a borrowed retreat sweater when I stepped out of the Uber and saw the first black car. It was parked right outside Mount Olive Baptist Church, where I'd been married, baptized all 3 of my children, and buried my husband 7 years ago. I hadn't planned to come here today. I hadn't planned anything, honestly. I just wanted to pick up my spare house keys from Denise's place, get a long bath and fall face first into my mattress. But I froze when I saw the second car. Then a third. All lined up on the curb like a family reunion or, Lord have mercy, a funeral. The thick New Orleans air wrapped itself around me like wet cotton. The sky was heavy as if it knew something I didn't. I pulled my tote bag higher on my shoulder and walked closer. The church doors were open. I could hear soft piano music drifting out, familiar and slow. It was, His Eye is on the Sparrow. The kind of song that only plays at homegoings. My sandals slapped the concrete as I climbed the stairs. Something in my gut twisted. I stopped in the doorway, heart pounding, eyes adjusting. And then I saw it. A giant photo of me on an easel. Smiling. That one from last Christmas, the only decent picture I'd taken all year. I was holding a mug of hot cocoa and wearing my red scarf. Somebody had cropped out the kitchen mess behind me. Above the picture, printed in gold script. In loving memory of Lorraine Fontaine. Sunrise 1966. Sunset 2025. I swear for a full 10 seconds I thought I was having a stroke. I stepped inside. The air smelled like lilies and old wood. Pews full of people, some I hadn't seen in years. And they were all dressed in black. "Excuse me," I whispered to no one, brushing past an older couple in the back. My throat tightened. At the pulpit, my oldest child, Marcus, was speaking. Suit tight around his neck, eyes damp. He cleared his throat and said, "Mama was a strong woman. She didn't always say what was on her mind, but she meant everything she said." Someone sniffled loudly. I took another step down the center aisle. No one turned to look. No one gasped. The preacher nodded solemnly, hands folded. The deacon fanned himself. The choir sat in their robes, eyes low. I kept walking, heartbeat climbing into my ears. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I held onto the side of the pews like I was underwater. Marcus kept talking. "She sacrificed everything for us. Even when things got hard after Dad passed, she still held this family together." That's when my daughter Nina turned around. She blinked. Her mouth dropped open. Her little black hat wobbled on her head like it might fly off. I opened my mouth to speak, but she beat me to it. "Mama," she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. That one word broke the spell. Heads turned. Gasps rose like smoke. Someone clutched their chest. An auntie fainted, or pretended to. Marcus dropped his notes. I stopped in the middle of the aisle. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "What the hell is this?" I said. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the church carpet. Then my youngest, Jacob, stood up slowly like he was seeing a ghost. "It's really you," he said, voice shaky. "We thought you were gone." "Gone? Gone where?" I stared at all of them. My family. My blood. Some crying, some stunned, some pretending not to be surprised at all. And that's when it hit me. Nobody had called the police. Nobody had filed a missing persons report, apparently. Nobody checked in with the retreat center, which was just 2 hours away in Baton Rouge. I told them I was going. Left a note on the fridge. Gave my sister Denise the number for emergencies. And yet here I was. Standing at my own funeral. Alive. Not a single one of them looked relieved. Just caught. Nina walked up to me, heels clicking. She wrapped her arms around me tight like a scared little girl. Her breath was warm against my ear when she whispered, "We didn't think you were coming back. Ever." Something cold ran down my spine. "I told y'all where I was going," I said, pulling back. "I left a note." Denise stepped forward, arms crossed. "All we found was an empty house and overdue bills. You didn't answer your phone." Because I was at a silent retreat. No phones. No talking. That was the point. Marcus looked away. Jacob rubbed his temples. I turned back toward the photo on the easel. I walked up to it, looked at my own face smiling back at me. It was like being erased while still breathing. Someone cleared their throat behind me. The preacher, Reverend Clayton. "Well," he said, adjusting his glasses. "This is unexpected." "No, Reverend," I said, voice sharper than I intended. "What's unexpected is burying someone who isn't dead." I scanned the room again. People weren't crying anymore. Just watching. Waiting to see what I'd do next. I did what any sane woman would do. I walked up to the front pew, grabbed the memorial program out of someone's hand and flipped it open. 4 pages. Full obituary. Favorite color, green. Favorite song, A Change Is Gonna Come. Survived by 3 children. Preceded in death by loving husband, Arthur Fontaine. No mention of how I supposedly died. Just, Lorraine passed peacefully. Peacefully where? In my sleep? In a grocery store? On a space shuttle? It made no sense. Unless someone wanted me dead on paper. And if that was true, I had to ask the one question I wasn't ready for. Who benefits? Because this wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was planned. Someone went out of their way to write my obituary, plan a funeral, print programs, and rent out my family's church, without even confirming I was truly gone. There had to be money involved. Life insurance? Property transfer? Something. And judging by the way Denise wouldn't meet my eye, I had a good idea where to start looking. "Funeral's over," I said, voice flat. "Y'all can take your flowers and go home now." Then I walked out the church door, program still in my hand, and didn't look back. But I never expected what I'd find waiting for me at home. If you think that's wild, wait till you hear what happened after I opened the will. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up for the next part, because this story is just getting started. I don't even remember how I got home. I walked down St. Claude Avenue like a ghost myself, one foot in front of the other, gripping that funeral program like it was going to explain something if I stared hard enough. My keys were still in my tote, thank God. I hadn't been robbed. Not the way you'd think anyway. The second I unlocked the front door, something felt wrong. Not broken. Not messy. Just off. Like the house had moved on without me. The air was too still. Denise's throw pillows were rearranged. There was a faint smell of lemon-scented bleach and something else. Paper dust maybe. And silence. Not the peaceful kind either. The wrong kind. The kind that hums in your ears and tells you you're not alone even when you are. I dropped my bag by the door and walked through the house slowly, touching the back of chairs and brushing my fingers along tabletops like I needed to prove to myself this was still mine. It looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. And when I reached my bedroom, I stopped cold. There were clothes missing from my closet. Not all of them, just the good ones. My Sunday dresses. My nice church hat. My jewelry box was still there, but it was empty. Even the gold bangle Arthur gave me our last Christmas together. Gone. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still half in shock, and pulled out my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Just that blank black screen and the date, April 3rd. I had left on March 20th. 2 weeks. 2 damn weeks. That's when the question I hadn't wanted to face finally showed up. How fast do you have to disappear before your own children start writing your eulogy? I opened my photo gallery. The last picture was a screenshot I took of the retreat center's emergency contact info before I left. I clicked the number and held the phone to my ear. Lotus Ridge Wellness, this is Shelby. Hi Shelby, it's Lorraine Fontaine. I just got back from the silent retreat. I was there from March 20th to April 2nd. Oh, Miss Fontaine, yes, I remember. You were in cabin 7. Everything okay? I need to know if anyone called asking about me. Family maybe. Anyone. There was a pause. Shelby pulled up a record. Nope. We didn't get any inquiries on your file. Your sister dropped you off, right? My chest squeezed. Yes. Denise. Shelby hesitated. I remember her. He signed the waiver for you. But we never heard from her after that. I hung up. So no one called. No one checked. That meant they hadn't even tried. That's when the tears came. Not loud or heavy, just slow, hot ones sliding down my face as I sat there on my bed, surrounded by pieces of a life someone else had started packing up. I wiped my face and opened my email. That was the next blow. The whole inbox had been wiped. Every email, gone. And my phone history? Empty. No call logs. No messages. It had all been reset. Not like I'd done it. Like someone else had. I knew then, someone had been in my accounts. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being dramatic. Somebody was erasing me. For real. That night I went over to Marcus's place. He and his wife lived in a new condo out in Metairie. Fancy landscaping. Digital keypad on the front door. When he opened it he looked like he'd seen a ghost again, but this time he didn't smile. "Why didn't you come home after the funeral?" he asked, stepping aside. I blinked. "Why was there a funeral, Marcus?" He didn't answer. I walked in. His wife, Shannon, was sitting on the couch holding their baby. She offered a tight smile. Marcus sat across from me. His leg was bouncing. "I left a note," I said. "I told y'all I was going off the grid. It was 2 weeks. Not 2 years." He rubbed his eyes. "You've been distant, Ma. For a long time. You shut people out." "Shut people out?" I laughed, cold and low. "I raised 3 kids while working 2 jobs. I showed up to every PTA meeting, every birthday, every flu shot and dentist appointment. And I still cooked dinner every Sunday until 2 months ago." He looked down at the floor. I called. No answer. We came by. Place looked empty. Because I wasn't home. "You knew I wasn't home." Shannon cleared her throat. "They were scared, Lorraine. After your husband passed, you stopped." I snapped my head toward her. "Don't you dare bring Arthur into this." She went quiet. I looked back at Marcus. "Tell me the truth. Why the funeral?" He hesitated. "Denise told us you'd left the country." "What?" "She said you were unstable. That you left in a rush. She found your house empty and assumed. She knew where I was. I gave her the retreat number." "I don't know," he muttered. I wasn't sure what to believe. But then she showed us paperwork. She said she found a note saying you didn't want to be found." "What paperwork?" He went quiet. "Marcus," I said slowly, "has anyone filed a life insurance claim?" His head snapped up. "You'd have to ask Denise," he said too quickly. I stared at him for a long time. That's when I knew. They didn't plan this. Not all of them. But Denise? Oh, she was steering the ship. And they were just passengers too weak to fight the current. I stood up. "You said I've been distant," I said, voice calm. "Well, maybe that was a gift. Because if I'd stayed close, I would have seen how easy it is for y'all to forget me." He looked up at me, eyes full of guilt. "I'll ask you one more thing," I said, stepping toward the door. "Did you sign anything? Anything legal? About me? A death certificate? A will? Anything?" He opened his mouth but said nothing. Which told me everything I needed to know. I left without saying goodbye. When I got back home, the porch light was on. Denise was sitting in one of my rocking chairs like it was hers. I didn't say a word. I walked right past her. She stood and followed me inside. "You're upset," she said gently. "But let's not blow this out of proportion." I turned slowly to face her. "You planned a funeral for someone who wasn't dead." She scoffed. "I was worried." "No. You were calculating." She walked to the window, avoiding my eyes. There were decisions that had to be made. I crossed my arms. "Did you file for the insurance?" "I needed help covering expenses. I thought." "You thought I wouldn't come back." She said nothing. I checked my phone, Denise. My email. My house. "You erased me. What did you do with my things?" "Put them in storage. Just in case," she said. And that's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She was annoyed I'd ruined her plan. And I still didn't know how deep it went. But tomorrow I was going to the courthouse. Because if I was dead on paper, I needed to see exactly who had declared it so. They wrote me off like I didn't matter. But I'm about to show them just how alive I am. There's a picture frame on my dresser I haven't touched in years. The wood is chipped in the corners. A little uneven on the left side where Jacob threw a football through the hallway window and the glass cracked. But I never replaced it. I told myself I liked it that way. Honest. Or Inside the frame is a photo of me and Arthur at the Lake Pontchartrain Seafood Festival, right before he got sick. He's holding a paper plate stacked with crawfish. I'm leaning into him, face flushed from the sun, mouth open mid-laugh. I don't remember what he said, but I remember how he made me feel. Like I was still young, still worth holding close. I picked up that frame for the first time in a long time this morning and just stared. The woman in that photo looked happy, strong, whole, and all I could think was, when did I disappear? Not just from the world, from them. From Marcus, Nina, and Jacob. From Denise. From the community that used to know me by name and not by a fake obituary. They buried me and didn't even blink. I used to be the glue. Back in the 90s, we couldn't afford daycare, so I'd work double shifts at the diner, come home, heat up leftovers, and read school books with all 3 kids around the table. Arthur was doing long hours at the port back when dock work was still steady money. He'd get home smelling like oil and seawater, and I'd pass him the baby before even untying my apron. We didn't have much, but we were close. We were a unit. I remember one night, Arthur came home early and found me crying on the kitchen floor because the fridge had stopped working and everything was spoiled. I had $27 to my name. He didn't say a word, just sat beside me, pulled me into his lap and said, "We gon' laugh about this one day, Lo." We never did. He died of a heart attack 4 years later, right on the porch after mowing the lawn. I found him slumped over, arms limp, sweat still clinging to his face. That day rewired me. I went into survival mode. And I never came out. Grief didn't make me softer. It made me sharper. I clipped coupons, packed school lunches, got a second job cleaning houses. I didn't date. Didn't party. Barely slept. Everything I had I gave to them. Even Denise. She'd just lost her job, so I let her move in with us. Said it would be temporary. 15 years later, she was still in my guest room like it was rent-free property. Always in my business. Always in the background, whispering her little side comments when I was too tired to bite back. "You know," she'd say, arms crossed, "you coddle those kids too much. Let 'em struggle a little." But I had struggled. And I wouldn't wish that on them. Maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe I gave them too much, made things too easy, and they forgot what it cost me. The morning after I confronted Denise, I stood in my kitchen sipping weak coffee and staring at the back door. The wind rattled the screen. It was the same door Arthur used to sneak through when he got home late from work so he wouldn't wake the kids. That door creaked open once, back in 2013 when I caught Jacob sneaking back in after missing curfew. I sat him down and read him for filth, but by the end of the night he was crying and saying, "I just wanted to feel something. Everything's been cold since Dad died." I held him. I told him I understood. But now, that same boy looked me dead in the face at my own fake funeral and didn't say a word. I pulled out the old cedar box where I kept all my personal documents, birth certificates, insurance papers, Arthur's death certificate, and something I hadn't touched since he passed, the original will. I laid it out on the table, hands trembling. It was still there. Arthur's signature, notarized, clean as day. His handwriting wasn't pretty, but it was firm. The will clearly listed me as the sole executor and beneficiary. The house, the accounts, even the life insurance, all in my name. There was no mention of Denise. No mention of anyone else. I sat back and stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at the envelope Denise had mailed to the attorney's office. The one she had waved in front of Marcus like gospel. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I opened my journal. January 14th, 2022. I'm tired, Arthur. I know I'm supposed to be strong, but I feel invisible. Sometimes I wonder if the kids even see me anymore. I cook. I clean. I pay the bills. But no one asks how I am. Not even Denise. I miss being needed. I miss being wanted. I shut the journal. Tears slid down my cheek, hot and angry. They erased me because I made it easy. I became the wallpaper. The one who never asked for help. The one who held everything together while everyone else grieved or fell apart or leaned on me until I was just a shadow. So when I disappeared for 2 weeks, they didn't panic, they adjusted. It was convenient. It made things simple. I was no longer a person, I was a burden off their shoulders. But I'm done being silent. That afternoon, I called the courthouse and asked to speak with someone from the probate office. A young woman named Camilla answered. Her voice was chipper but careful, like she'd already read the file. I gave her my name. There was a pause. "Ma'am," she said slowly, "you've been declared legally deceased." I closed my eyes. "Do you have any identification?" she asked. "I have everything," I said, "including the original will." She was quiet for a beat. "You'll need to come in. And I'd recommend bringing someone with you. A witness, if possible." I hung up and sat there in the quiet of my kitchen. And that's when I remembered what Arthur used to say, usually after some storm or some debt notice or some kid drama. "They can shake the walls, baby. But they ain't gonna knock you down. Not if you stand your ground." So I stood. And I walked to the hall closet. And I pulled out the lockbox Arthur left behind. The one with our marriage certificate, his old military dog tags, and a bundle of envelopes wrapped in twine. On top of that bundle, in his crooked handwriting, was a note. "If anything ever happens to me, or to you, trust no one but the paper." That's when it hit me. He knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to leave a trail. Tomorrow, I'm walking into that courthouse with every document I've got. I'm done proving I exist to people who never saw me to begin with. They thought they'd buried the old me. But I'm still breathing and I'm not done yet. Subscribe and keep watching. You need to see what I found in the safe. I hadn't opened the floor safe since Arthur passed. It sat beneath the rug in our bedroom closet, half hidden under an old pair of slippers and a box of winter coats I hadn't touched in years. Arthur bought the safe the same week Jacob broke his arm climbing the backyard fence. Said it was time to protect what we workin' for. At the time I thought he was being dramatic. We didn't have much to protect. But now it might be the only thing keeping me from vanishing for real. I had to force the rug back with my foot and dig under the floorboard latch. The key was still taped inside my jewelry box, behind a loose lining I'd only remembered because Arthur told me where to look. If anything ever goes sideways. Well, sideways doesn't even begin to cover it. The safe clicked open with a low metallic groan. Inside, everything was just as I remembered. Stacks of old receipts, a manila folder labeled House Plus Deed, a small pistol wrapped in cloth I never had the courage to fire, and then tucked in the very back was something I'd never seen before. A thick white envelope marked in Arthur's handwriting. "Read only if you feel the walls closing in." My throat went dry. I sat back on my heels, hands trembling, and opened it. Inside were 3 things. 1. A handwritten letter, 6 pages long. 2. A notarized copy of the original will. 3. A document I didn't recognize, something that looked like a legal affidavit. I unfolded the letter first. Arthur's penmanship wasn't easy to read, but I'd know his voice anywhere. It was like hearing him whisper straight into my ear. "Lorraine, if you're reading this, I guess things got real. You always were the strong one, stronger than me even. I kept things from you. Things I should have said while I was breathing, but I didn't want to bring trouble to your door. Now I think I may have brought it anyway. You can't trust Denise. I know that's hard to hear, she's your sister. But I saw things. Quiet things. She used to come to me for money behind your back. Said it was for the kids, but it wasn't. He was in debt low. And when I told her no the last time, she said, 'Don't worry. You won't be around forever.' I didn't think much of it then. Thought it was just desperation talking. But after that she started hanging around more. Watching. Listening. I had our will recertified just in case. You'll find a second copy enclosed, date stamped and notarized. No changes. Just insurance in case anything ever came into question. I know you want to see the good in people. That's who you are. But if something happens to me or to you, don't look away. Look straight at the truth. Trust no one but the paper. I love you forever. Arthur." I sat on the floor, shaking. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. All this time I thought Arthur left me with a life to rebuild, but he'd actually left me with a warning. And I ignored it. Because I wanted to believe family would never cut you that deep. I picked up the affidavit next. It was signed by a notary public in Jefferson Parish. Arthur had filled it out himself. A sworn statement listing financial transactions he'd had with Denise. Cash advances, loan payments, even a bounced check she tried to deposit under his name. He'd kept a trail. Denise had been stealing from him. And now she was stealing from me. I took a deep breath, folded everything back neatly and set it aside. Then I grabbed my phone and called the probate clerk again. "Camilla," I said when she answered. "I'm coming in today. And I'm bringing documents." The courthouse smelled like old wood and air conditioning. I wore a dark blue dress, one of the few things Denise hadn't packed away, and tied my curls back so they wouldn't fall in my face. I didn't want to look fragile. I wanted to look present, alive. Camilla met me at the records window. She was young, maybe 30, with clear-framed glasses and a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You brought what you said?" she asked quietly. I handed her the envelope. She opened it and scanned the documents one by one. Her eyes stopped on Arthur's letter, then on the affidavit, then finally on the original will. She glanced at the file on her screen. "This doesn't match what we have in the system," she said. "I figured," I replied. "Ma'am," she lowered her voice. "The version we received lists Denise Miller as the sole executor and heir. It also lists you as deceased as of March 22nd. I clenched my jaw. "That's not possible," I said. "I left for retreat on March 20th. Denise drove me there. She knew I was alive." Camilla's hands moved fast, typing into the system. "Did you ever see a death certificate?" "No. Just the obituary. And the funeral program." She looked up. "There's a death certificate on file. Signed by a medical examiner. But it was digitally filed, not in person. Can I get a copy?" She nodded and printed one. When I saw it, my knees almost buckled. It listed my cause of death as cardiac arrest. No hospital. No witness. Just a digital submission. "Who submitted this?" I asked. She squinted at the form. "The signatures registered under a Dr. Byron Gill." I blinked. Dr. Gill hadn't practiced in New Orleans for over 3 years. I remembered because he was Jacob's old pediatrician. Retired after a malpractice suit. Which meant someone used his old credentials. Or faked them. Denise had committed fraud. Real legal criminal fraud. "I want to challenge this," I said. "Everything. The death certificate. The will. All of it." Camilla nodded and handed me a form. "You'll need to file a formal contest. And I suggest bringing a lawyer." I took the form, but in the back of my mind I already knew who I'd call. Eleanor Bell. She was Arthur's old friend from church, and a probate attorney with a spine of steel. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but I knew she'd take the case the second she heard what Denise had done. When I got home that evening, the porch light was off. Denise was gone. But her scent lingered, that overpowering vanilla perfume she wore like armor. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of sweet tea. My hands were still shaking. That's when I noticed something else was missing. The metal lockbox I'd kept in the cabinet. Gone. Inside that box had been family photos. My social security card. The extra set of house keys. And a flash drive with all my scanned financial records. She knew I'd gone to the courthouse. And now she was covering her tracks. But it's too late. Is what I found in the safe. It's enough to burn her little plan to the ground. She thought she could kill me on paper and take everything I built. But I'm not done fighting. You better believe I'm showing up at that will reading. And I won't be alone. The thing about showing up to a room where everyone thought you were dead? They don't know how to look at you. They blink too much. Or not at all. They pretend they're surprised, but deep down you can see it on their faces. They knew this day might come and they were praying it wouldn't. I walked into the conference room at Lambert and Lyons Law on Magazine Street like I owned the place. Because technically I did. Everything in question. The house, the assets, the retirement accounts, even Arthur's old truck parked in Marcus's driveway, was mine. At least according to the original will. But today I wasn't just fighting for property. I was fighting to prove I existed. That I mattered. That I wasn't disposable. The room smelled like air freshener and expensive paper. There was a long oak table in the center, stacked with legal folders and water bottles with little paper napkins tucked under them. One wall had a bookshelf full of dusty binders. On the other, A giant canvas print of some courthouse in Baton Rouge. Cold and beige. I walked in, shoulders back, heart pounding behind my ribs. Eleanor Bell was already seated, tapping her pen against her yellow legal pad. She wore her signature navy blue suit and those wireframe glasses that always made her look like she could smell a lie before it left your mouth. She stood when she saw me. "Lori," she said, voice like iron wrapped in velvet. "Ready?" I nodded. A door creaked open behind me. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Denise. Her heels clicked across the tile like she was arriving to accept an award. She wore a pearl gray dress, black pumps, and a little matching handbag, the same one I'd given her for Mother's Day last year. Bold. She sat across from me without speaking. Just gave me that same tight-lipped smile she always used when she was cornered. Behind her came Marcus, then Nina, then Jacob. All three of them avoided my eyes. Not one of them said, "Hey, Ma." Not even a nod. Just silence. The wrong kind of silence again. The lawyer, Mr. Harold Lyon, a balding man who looked like a retired history teacher, cleared his throat as he sat down. "Thank you all for coming. This is the formal reading of the amended last will and testament of the late Arthur Fontaine. Now, before we begin, I've been made aware of complications." He looked at me over his glasses. Eleanor spoke first. "Mr. Lyon, before you proceed with the version submitted by Ms. Denise Miller, I'd like to enter into record the original legally binding will, signed and notarized by Arthur Fontaine, dated August 12, 2015. She handed it across the table. Mr. Lyon blinked. "But that version was superseded by a revised copy dated February 2025. Which is a forgery," Eleanor cut in smoothly. Gasps from my children. Denise's mouth twitched. Mr. Lyon looked flustered. "Do you have proof?" Eleanor tapped the stack of papers in front of her. A sworn affidavit from Mr. Fontaine, dated prior to his death, detailing multiple financial discrepancies involving Ms. Miller. A copy of the original will. And, most importantly, sworn statements from the notary who filed the updated version, confirming their seal was duplicated without consent. Mr. Lyon slowly removed his glasses. "I see." I leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "She declared me dead, Harold. Filed a fake death certificate. Held a memorial service. Erased my accounts. Sold my furniture. Changed the locks. All while I was at a retreat center in Baton Rouge." Denise finally spoke. "She left no note. No call. She was gone. We thought. You knew where I was." I snapped. "You drove me there." Nina shrunk back in her chair. Marcus stared at the table. Jacob spoke up, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know any of this. Aunt Denise said you had a breakdown." "She lied," I said. "To all of you." Mr. Lyon rubbed his temples. "Given these revelations, I'll need to temporarily freeze all probate actions until we verify the original documents." Eleanor folded her hands. "I'll also be filing for criminal investigation regarding fraud, perjury, and financial tampering." Denise stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." "You faked a death certificate," Eleanor said coolly. "You forged legal documents. That's not ridiculous. That's a felony." Marcus finally looked at me, shame in his eyes. "Why didn't you just come home sooner?" I stared at him. "I was gone for 2 weeks, Marcus. You held a funeral after 9 days. You buried me without checking." He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I stood up slowly. "You know what hurts the most?" I said, voice tight. "It's not the forgery. Or the funeral. It's that none of you, not one, called the retreat. Or filed a missing persons report. You just moved on." Jacob whispered, "We thought you didn't want to be found." "And you believed that," I said, "because it was easier than facing how invisible I'd become in this family." Nobody spoke. I turned toward Denise. "You didn't just try to take my things. You tried to take me. My name. My life. My story." She said nothing. Just clutched that little pearl handbag like it held what was left of her power. The meeting adjourned shortly after. Mr. Lyon said the courts would need a few weeks to sort the documents. But Eleanor assured me we had everything we needed, and then some. As we left, Eleanor placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," she said. I nodded, lips pressed tight. But the truth is, I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. Like something had broken loose inside me and I wasn't sure how to put it back. Outside the office, the Louisiana heat wrapped around me like a fever. I took a few steps toward the sidewalk when everything went sideways. The ground tilted. My knees buckled. The sky turned white. I heard someone call my name, Eleanor maybe, but it was faint. I clutched my chest and dropped to the pavement. Pain shot through my ribs like lightning. My vision blurred. People were rushing. Voices shouting. "Call 911. Is she breathing? Get an ambulance." I was on my back, staring up at the sky, the edges of my world dimming. And then through the blur I saw her. Denise. Standing across the street. Smiling. And slipping something, a flash drive, into her purse. My pulse roared in my ears. She wasn't done. And if I didn't survive this, she'd win. The fight for my life wasn't just emotional, it was literal. What was on that flash drive? And would I survive to stop her? Like, comment, and subscribe for the final twist. You won't believe what comes next.